Hello everyone, I guess Jen, hopefully you're having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on 10 things I wish I knew sooner in regards to collecting soccer cards. This isn't a doom and gloom type of video, it's more so just in my 4.5 years of being involved in soccer cards, what I wish I could go back and tell myself earlier on. Sadly, we don't have those capabilities yet, so instead I'm just going to tell you guys. I know there are new people coming into soccer all the time, so hopefully this can help some people, and if you have been around for a while, hopefully it's entertaining, and if you have anything to share as well, would love to hear it down below in a comment. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So, number one, this is going to be the most cliche of them all, but it is slow and steady. Put it at number one because I feel it's the most important. Most of these aren't ordered, but I just wanted to get it out of the way real quick. Very obvious here, but a lot of people come into the hobby and you're very, very quick to just jump at everything because everything is sort of astounding to you. Everything's new. It's all exciting. You're a kid in a candy store and you're just having a grand old time. Eventually, you sort of morph into the tortoise where you've seen a lot of this stuff before. You understand that time is working in your favor and that if you want to buy something, you could get it now. You might be able to get it later and you can sort of evaluate that and establish what you think from there. You also have experience, which is helpful. In addition to that, if you can utilize time appropriately, you won't burn out. A lot of people think that they don't have enough time and they're just constantly going and going and going, and eventually that's going to lead to burnout. While if you just sit back and sort of understand that you will be here for a while, if you intend to be here for a while, you can be at a much more relaxed and efficient sort of rate. Beyond that, I sort of recommend not to marry anything early on. Something like the Zebra Choice Messi. Maybe you like Zebra Choices, maybe they look cool to you right now, maybe you're just getting in the hobby and that excites you and you want to, say, put together the whole set. I would just advise against it because early on, you're probably going to bounce around a bit in terms of what you like. And so at that point, it's probably best just to get a kind of feel for the land rather than marrying something and, halfway through building the set, you get bored with it, or you find you can't branch out into other things because you were working too much on this. And so I think it's good to sort of go slow and steady in terms of wanting to build out, huge sets of whatever it may be. At number two, we have pricing does not equal collectability. This is an easy example where one card is much more collectible than the other. The 71 bis is basically the biggest card in the soccer space in terms of iconic nature, and it goes for the same price as this one-of-one Lamine Yamal. That's essentially a gambling product within a card. I mean, it's much more gamble than it is collector-based pricing, so that's why they get the same price. But all in all, the 71 bis, if I had to guess which one's going to be worth more in 10 years, it's probably the 71 bis to a very high degree. Now, there is a chance that the Lamine Yamal gets higher, but at the end of the day, this is one of the most collectible cards in the hobby, while this is one that is very collectible to a very small percent of people. Now, this is a very obvious example, but another one is this PSA 9 Prism. This is from the first World Cup in 2014, and compare that to a 2004 Monday Chromo Messi. So, these were both $660 in 2020. To me, I had luckily been in the card space long enough, in soccer cards in particular, to sort of see through this. When you look at this back in the day, the 2004 PSA 8 Messi over here on the right is a true rookie within a league release, and it has much more appeal to a Messi collector than, say, a 10th year base card from 2014 Prism that's relatively available. I was seeing stacks of them everywhere. Now, this is relatively available for Spain, but Spain product release in 2004 is a bit different than America in 2014. And so at the time, they were the same price, but if you had enough understanding of what was going on, you could see that the Monday Chromo is probably a much more collectible card. And as time goes on, that sort of plays itself out. Now in 2024, the PSA 9 Prism is worth $40, and the PSA 8 Monday Chromo is anywhere from $700 to $800 typically. And so one of those cards, the one that is much more collectible, is going to sort of stay the course, while the other one that had very little collectability has fallen greatly. And in terms of how do you come about that? What makes something collectible? A big factor is the importance to a player's career, right? A rookie card is always going to have that sort of signature importance that it is the earliest, and it's one of only so many early cards for that player, and it's typically the most scarce since over time products ramp up in volume. But in addition to that, there's a lot of people putting together all of the Messi rookies in whatever grade they can, but there's not a lot of people building out base 2014 Prism sets. I mean, when a Messi PSA 9 is going for $40, that shows you the demand for basically every other card in the set is zero. So this isn't really a collectible card, while this Muddy Chromo is, for a myriad of reasons, but all that to say that you have to understand cards at a deeper level than just price, because if you just go off of price, you're almost kind of playing blind. It is good to note what cards are some of the most expensive in the sense that you can get an idea, but within those cards you do have to do some sort of breakdown and evaluating what their true collectability is. Again, when it comes to collecting cards, this is another example where I put cards highly over slabs. A lot of people, especially early on, and I fell victim to this for a little bit, was overemphasizing a card being in a PSA slab. A lot of people see PSA slabs and they think that this card is worth something because someone paid to get it graded, right? If you're going to pay 15, 20 bucks to get it graded, well, surely that card's worth something. It's also a gem mint card, which means that it's in pristine condition. But honestly, a lot of these cards are made recently. At least half of these cards, when they're released, should be 10s. So it's not that impressive that you have a top 50% base card, right? I mean, the base cards themselves are not all that collectible. If you looked up these base cards on eBay, they probably go for $1 to $10, anywhere in there. Meanwhile, the PSA 10s go for $50. These cards going for $40 to $50 when I found them on eBay. Now for me, I've sort of put $40 to $50 in some other cards that are based on the card and not the slab. So these are the last three $40 to $50 cards I bought. We have a Thomas Muller Optic out of 10 gold on the left. We have a Zlatan first year Manchester United. It says rookie. It's not a rookie, far from it, but nonetheless, it is a red color match out of 11. And then we have a Galactic Gareth Bale on the far right. So all these cards are about top 10. They're all fairly notable players. Of course, they are not the likes of, I guess, a Jude Bellingham, sure, maybe, but they are not the like, surely, of Messi and Ronaldo, and that's okay. But I can say that these are much more collectible cards than those base cards are for the main players, right? There's no one really that's going out and putting together, full master set of all the base cards of all these guys, so these cards have very little meaning. That's not to say that in the future that can't change, but I would much prefer to go after cards that are worth $50 than slabs that are worth $50. Now, I guess this is a scenario where a slab is worth $50, but it's a PSA 9, so I'm not really paying a premium for the slab. A lot of the PSA 10s are where you start to pay a premium for something that might not even really deserve a premium. And so in this scenario, it's not to say that all slabs are bad, but you should care about the card first and then care about the slab secondarily. And number 4, we have brand importance. Now, this is one that, you could make a whole video about, so I'm not going to go that deep into it. But on the left-hand side here, we have two much more expensive cards, but cards that actually have some sort of meaning within soccer. Panini World Cup stickers are basically the biggest collectible known to man in terms of sports collectibles. And the 2014 Prism Neymar here is the first Prism release, but it's also the Prism World Cup sort of branding that we've seen throughout the last 8 to 12 years within soccer, and so it's grown pretty decent as well, considering that it's been around for the entirety of modern. Comparatively, on the right, we have a 2020 Topps Chrome Steve Aoki release, which, this type of release, why would someone want to collect particularly the Steve Aoki 2020 Topps Chrome? It's very weird to me. People might go into that just to get certain players, but for the most part, it's just something I generally avoid. And sort of the same thing for Topps Now. These are base cards that are printed on demand, so people order them and then they get sent out. And, these are the types of cards that are basically just printed as fodder for people to be able to have something, to be able to rip, to be able to have a connection to modern, and it is important, but at the end of the day, these two on the right, are they cards that people are going to search back for when the years go by, right? If we're in 2028, are people really going to look back for 2020 Steve Aoki Topps Chrome? It's hard to imagine. What I typically like to think of is someone going to even search this up, right? Are you going to go on eBay and search up this 2021 Topps Now number 11? Because certainly there's tons of Topps Now from that year. So are you going to search this particular Topps Now up on eBay? No, probably not. And these sell for like $1. They probably cost $3 or $4 initially to get from Topps Now. And so it's important to be able to recognize which brands are actually going to maintain value and which ones sort of fall by the wayside. And from my experience, at least, a lot seem to fall by the wayside. So it is important, as can be, to associate with some of the better, more collectible sets within soccer. The 5th thing I wish I knew when it pertains to soccer cards is the breadth that is out there. I was not at all understanding when I initially came in of what was sitting out there waiting to be found. So in terms of particular players, typically most people are going to come in with some of these early cards, say a Mosaic or, Topps Finest release, Topps Chrome, something along those lines. Eventually you start to dabble back maybe into the 2017s, 2016s, maybe even 2006, and you start to find some of the older player career cards. And then you get into some of the, maybe even rookies or earliest cards of these players, and some of the most expensive, hard to find, niche numbered items with on-card releases, whatever it may be, really, really low numbering from key sets. There's just so many different paths that you can go within collecting even these 3 to 4 players I have up here now. And so this speaks to why I mentioned early on maybe not to marry a certain set or card or parallel early on, because once you start getting into it more and more and just digging deeper, there are so many things out there that can distract you or take your attention elsewhere. And some of the times you might actually want to go to that something else and take your attention elsewhere because it might be worthwhile. It might be a much more enjoyable collecting adventure. So there's always further that you can really go down this sort of iceberg. You could think of this iceberg in even a different sense, that all of these cards you're looking at are actually at the top of the iceberg in and of itself, because these are all the modern players. If you then start going back further and further in time, you're going to understand that even within this iceberg, there's another iceberg that engulfs all of that, and it is a much, much bigger space than you can ever imagine, because there are league releases over the last 100 years, all over the world, so it is just an endless rabbit hole that you can go down. Number 6 is an easy one, and that is to simply make a list, whether that be a top 10, 15, 20, whatever you want to do in terms of your list. Make a list and fill it up with the 10, 15, 20 cards that you would most like to get. Now, you can go about it one of two ways. You can either put expensive cards on there that maybe one day you can attain, or you can put less expensive cards that are just hard to find out there. You want to make this a list that is somewhat challenging. You don't want to be able to go and just buy them all on eBay for a buy it now price, but something that you could, actually hunt for and search for. And this is sort of a fun way of being able to accomplish goals over time, check off things as you go, and actually puts you to work in terms of figuring out what your top 10 is and putting that on paper or on an Excel sheet, whatever it may be. But it's good to get your thoughts out there and to be able to evaluate it and compare the cards one to one. It's an enjoyable process as time goes on. It gives you something to work towards, which I think is a worthwhile cause. Number 7 is a pretty simple one as well, but it can also be very difficult, and that is collect for yourself. I always love this picture because it's just a guy and, all of his stuff that he likes collecting. It seems like he just does this for himself. He's got binders, he's got some boxes, whatever it may be, some vintage, this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, that is what collecting is about. You're a person that is owning these cards and hopefully enjoying these cards. That's the main goal. So you want to be able to buy things and enjoy things that you are actually going to be happy with owning, right? That is the purpose. Now, a lot of the time this can be a little distorted because there are obviously online sort of groups that we'll talk about later, or cliques of people, or there's almost this sort of social aspect to owning cards where if you own certain cards, you're in certain groups or you talk to certain people, and there's these cliques that start to form. And so you can be enticed into buying certain things to be a part of certain crowds. And I think that that's probably, the dark side of collecting. I don't think that that's the main point of it all. Certainly I understand why it exists, and I do, and we'll talk about it later, I do definitely recommend interacting with others on social media, making this a more communal thing, but don't let that dictate how you buy cards. Buy cards for yourself, buy cards you like, and then beyond that, let it be what it be, and make the connections you will, but don't force that. Number 8 is pricing context. Now I have a few different tools up here. 130 point, Card Ladder, PWCC, eBay. 130 point and eBay are easier for things that are, more modern and simpler to comp. Card Ladder and PWCC have sales history that goes further back into the, 2010s. And so I really appreciate the 2010s sales pricing history because you can really get perspective on what things were worth before the boom happened. And I don't think that, it's a perfect one-to-one between what a card was worth pre-boom and what it's worth now, and whatever that multiplier is, it should be the same for everything, because that's not the case. Different things went on different sort of rides. But at least having some sort of idea what things used to be worth before everything really popped off is nice to be able to understand, what did people think back in the day. Number 9 is the rainbow test, and this is something that, sort of came a bit later. Again, something I wish I would have known earlier, but for me, and we're going to use an example here from Seth, aka Soccer Card Corner, It is the simple question that you should ask yourself before you buy a card. Would I like to add other parallels from the set? Say, for example, in this 2017 Topps Chrome set, Seth went after the rainbow. He has basically all of them. And I think that this is an important question to ask yourself when you buy cards, just in general, is would you be more comfortable buying, say, a card that is lower numbered if it came down in price? Because a lot of the times, spoiler, cards do come down in price, especially modern cards, before they can find their floor. So if you are buying a parallel from a set, do you plan on buying more parallels from that set? Are you working towards a goal within that set? What is your reason? So ask yourself this question, and if the answer is yes, then I think that it's perfectly fine to go ahead and buy the card. That makes sense. You like the set, you want to go ahead and explore it more, then, it seems right up your alley. But if no, if you do not want to continue hunting other parallels in the set, why is that? Now, you can still buy a card even if you don't want to collect all the parallels within the set. Out of all the numbered cards I own, I don't plan on actually building rainbows out of all of them. That's not always going to be the case. But if you're not going to, do you understand why? And I think that that is a really important question to answer, because basically a lot of people can be caught up buying random parallels for the most part of sets you don't really care about just because you sort of looked at it one day, it looked kind of cool, but you have no real intent to follow through with it further. And if you don't, I think it's important to understand why that is. And then at number 10, we have a cheesy kumbaya sort of point, and that is that I think it's important to connect with other collectors throughout the space, no matter how you sort of want to go about it. Within social media realms, typically Instagram, Discord, Facebook are the three main ones that come to mind for me. I don't know if kids have figured out how to do this on TikTok, but maybe they have. Nonetheless, I find Instagram to be a really, really good place because, Instagram's kind of made for collecting in a way, in the sense that it is pictures, and it can very easily be pictures of cards. And so all you have to do is look at the cards, like the post, keep it moving, comment here and there. Discord's a little bit more informative and chat-based and sort of informational. Little less cards since you can talk a bit easier there, and Facebook's a mix of both, I would say. But going on these platforms, I feel like, is very, very useful for collectors, as it's going to allow you to meet other people, interact with the hobby, see what other people do. Not that you want to be totally impressionable, but you do want to learn from other people, right? You don't want to entirely be a sheep, but it is important to compare and see what other people are doing and figure out why they're doing that, right? So it's important to connect in that manner. In addition to connecting in that manner, if you want to watch more YouTube videos, mostly soccer cards here. There are a couple TCG ones that I put up there as some Pratt Alpha investments, but mostly soccer here. There's a lot of informative stuff that you can find on these channels. For me, I wish I had all these videos at my disposal whenever I came in here. Now I have watched a lot of them since and picked up a ton of good stuff, but if I had all this at my disposal coming in, it would have been so much easier. Tons of great takeaways and information to be had there. But anything that allows you to connect to the hobby a little bit more, I think, is going to be a benefit to you in terms of whether it be learning or engaging socially with other collectors, meeting new people. It's just a grand old time, so I'd highly recommend. But yeah, those are 10 things I wish I knew sooner as it pertains to collecting soccer cards. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Again, anything you'd like to share, would love to hear in a comment down below. And if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and